Hello, everyone. Welcome on into OneSoccer.ca. Andy Petrillo, Gareth Wheeler, and Oliver Platt, who is in BC, getting ready for CONCACAF Nations League game there, Ollie. And you had a chance to be around the team as they did take to the field in practice, confirming that they will, in fact, play in these games against Curacao and Honduras. Three people spoke yesterday: head coach John Herdman, captain of the team, Atiba Hutchinson, and as well, the Deputy General Secretary of Canada Soccer, Earl Cochrane, addressed the media. But I guess first thing, Ollie, from what we're understanding, the players will continue to speak through Atiba. No one else was available.
Yeah, exactly. We had an opportunity to speak to Stephen Vittoria very briefly to fulfill broadcast obligations, but it was made clear that Atiba Hutchinson speaks for the team when it comes to the negotiations and the dispute. Anyone else that is made available, and again, that was only one player and only to us as the rights holder, speaks purely on football and on the game. So it's been a weird one. You're used to coming into these kinds of international windows, and it's your opportunity to get one-on-one time with the players, to speak to the players, to pick their brain on various subjects, obviously, mostly usually related to football. This time it's much different. It's been much more arm's length, with as you said, Atiba, the only player who's come out and addressed the media in general on the situation that's ongoing right now. So I think that's probably to be expected. I think it's clear the players obviously want to make sure that publicly, as I believe is the case internally, they're presenting that united front, and it's one player who's obviously experienced in speaking to the media who can strike the right tone for them.
Mm-hmm. I want to begin with some of the things that were said, and why don't we start with the head coach, John Herdman. And Gareth, he gave quite a lengthy press conference. There was a lot that he talked about. What in particular stood out to you?
Just overall, I think the tone and tenor of how the three individuals presented yesterday was very good. Look, these are good people. John, Atiba, Earl, these are hardworking people, and I firmly believe their hearts are in the right places. He looked a little bit tired, maybe emotional. I think that Atiba did too, and so did Earl. They've been kind of dragged through it the last week. So it wasn't really much about what he said rather than how he said it, and also the things that we didn't hear yesterday. I'm actually encouraged that it seems like Atiba Hutchinson confirmed that, they're going to be receiving outside counsel. This is what should have been done from the beginning. These negotiations should be done behind closed doors. Look, we're not at a point now when senior players can go up to the head of the association and negotiate, match appearance fees. That just seems so antiquated, especially with the complexities of pay equity and building sustainable infrastructure in this country that can go on and support Canadian soccer, and how much money goes to the coaching staff and the support staff around this team. These are complicated things that need proper people leading the way, that can bring about the truth and can bring about fairness. And we still didn't hear, the percentage numbers yesterday. We didn't hear a conversation about pay equity versus, percentages, but that's okay, because perhaps those things should stay behind closed doors and let the power brokers and the people that know what's going on, and the people that have vested interest in this, allow them to go about doing their business while this team gets back on the field.
Mm-hmm. Anything in particular, Herdman, for you, Ollie?
Well, I think, what stood out to me with all three of them was that, and I think is a reason for optimism and a reason to believe that progress can be made here is that, one, I thought Earl Cochrane was deliberately very, very positive in his manner, in his comments on the players and what's happened over the past couple of days. I thought that was exactly the right thing to do on his part, was to just try and diffuse whatever tension clearly has existed there over the past week or so, and further back than that, I think. And to make it clear that they're not trying to be against the players here. They're not trying to butt heads with the players, to have that much more kind of, open and positive manner about him, I thought was important. And then, Atiba mentioning that the players are now looking to secure legal representation and let the lawyers take care of these negotiations. I think that's been a big part of the issue here is that you've had, when you go into a negotiation situation and you have players sitting at the table and you have, CSA leadership sitting at the table, there's going to be things you disagree on, right? There's going to be things that aren't, that the two sides don't see eye to eye on in the initial part of those negotiations. And it becomes very easy at that point to take that personally, to take that as a sign of disrespect and a lack of appreciation of what you're doing, when it's just kind of a natural part of how negotiations go and that process. So having people at the table who can depersonalize that, who can understand that, that's how it goes, I think is going to be very important to kind of diffusing this and being able to move forward and find some common ground here. So those were the two big takeaways for me.
Take the emotion out of the equation. Have to. And that's when, the personality conflicts come in and, there's distrust and anger, and that needs to be separated.
I think there are a couple things that stood out in particular with Herdman for me, and I want to get your opinion on it as well. One thing, of course, is as much as we don't want to hear this because you just don't want to see it happen, that Canada is not the first federation to do this when it comes to qualifying for a World Cup and then having a dispute over how that prize money gets divvied up, compensation, allocation, everything that goes with it. There are a number of countries who have done this, players in particular in a World Cup year, they've done this. Of course, you never want to hear it, not unprecedented. And it also, stood out to me that he said, without doubt, this is somebody who's also the former head coach of the Canadian women's national team, about pay equality. Because again, we know the difference between getting an equal percentage of your prize money versus actually getting equal pay is completely different. Getting a percentage of 440 million, what the men get compared to, 60 million of what the women get is a completely different percentage compared to equal pay down the middle. And he, of course, had said he wanted it. So that stood out to me too, in particular, Ollie, because as much as we don't want to hear that these things happen, I guess, they do happen. How close do you think we are to getting a deal done, even though Earl Cochrane said there's not a drop dead date, but obviously likely you want this done before November? And do you want to hear the men be a little bit more clear when it comes to the pay equity versus pay equality?
Well, I think they're going to have to be at some point, whether that's internally or publicly. Earl Cochrane seemed to indicate that he didn't think they were far away and that there was too much in the way of an agreement here. Someone asked him if it would be done before the World Cup, and he kind of laughed at that question and said, yeah, a long way in time before Qatar. So the pay equity one is probably, for me, what looks like the biggest sticking point. I did ask Earl if there was a major obstacle, and he said he didn't seem to think so. It was more about kind of understanding the financial realities of the CSA and the players getting a proper picture of that. But, we've heard John Herdman come out and say he's in support of equal pay, thinks it's time. We heard Atiba come out and say that they want to do the right thing by the women. They want, a deal that's fair. But we haven't actually heard anyone on the players' sides tell us what that looks like. Janine Becky came out very, very clearly and said what that looks like for the women, right? Which is the equal pay deal, very similar, if not the same as the one US Soccer just signs. They're very clear that that's what they want, and they're not going to settle for anything that they feel is less than that. I think on the men's sides, you have to take the kind of, I don't think I think it's unavoidable that you take the lack of kind of a specific answer to those questions as to what that looks like as an indication that the men feel that the US deal may not be exactly what is right for Canada soccer. I think that's hard to avoid at this point, particularly when you see the mentioned percentage of prize money in the statement they put out. So whether they can, find some common ground on that, whether they can find something that works for Canada as opposed to what's worked for the US that they're happy with and that the women are also happy with, that I think is a pretty open question right now, because I don't think any of us really know exactly what the men's stance is going to be beyond a general desire. And I think it is a genuine desire for the deal to be fair for both sides. But exactly what that looks like, I don't think we really know yet.
Mm-hmm.
The details are all important, though, aren't they? I don't know if we need to, do you guys want to know what the terms are? I think earlier this week it was important because the little bit of a misunderstanding, 40% net or gross. If it was 40% gross, 40, 40, 20, I mean, those are grounds and levels to negotiate down and not go to miss a game, right? Like 30, 40, split the difference, 35. seems like the two sides weren't that far away, if that in fact was the presented case. And you know what? Now we might not know all of these dealings and opinions and these conversations that we really should have been having this week. Do we think that World Cup prize money should solely go to the players? I think there's an argument. Like, do people out there understand the difference between pay equity and percentage? And where does the public stand on that? These are very difficult issues. These are sensitive topics, right? And ones, again, that should be negotiated with lawyers and mediators in place. So fairness is the name of the game. And guess what? When a deal is signed, I highly doubt that everyone will be happy with the end outcome based upon their personal preferences. So, but that's what happens when you go through mediation and there's a lawyer, and that's where we're going now.